Welcome to Finding the Will of God. This is a devotional series where we are going to encourage you to understand how to know what God has placed you on this earth for better than ever before. And to be quite honest, it's not that complicated because there are several times in Scripture where God expressly says that something is His will. And that is exactly the case for today's subject. And that subject is, it is God's will for you to abstain from sexual immorality. Now, this is an unpopular thing to talk about in any context, but especially in this current culture. And we can get into a lot of offshoot conversations about this. But sexual purity with regard to the Bible is limited to the confines of heterosexual monogamous marriage. That's the only time that we see that sexuality is condoned. Now, this is where a lot of you that are skeptics might say, there's polygamy in the Bible, there's homosexuality in the Bible, this is here, this is there. That's true, but the only avenue that is condoned scripturally with regard to the avenue of sexuality is in the context that we mentioned. So you're like, well, what's God's will for my life? One of the things that God expressly says as His will is to abstain from sexual immorality. Now, I'm going to give you a tip on how to do that, but let's look at what the verse concerning this says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 3. It says, "For this is the will of God," he says, "even for your sanctification, your purity, your separateness," meaning that you would abstain from sexual immorality. Now, I don't want to get into all the details and the nitty-gritty of how that works, but there's a simple way that I have helped myself to think about sexual immorality with regard to what is right and what is wrong, and it's simple. A lot of people will ask if you're dating someone or if you're seeking a relationship or if you're in a marriage and you're like, is it okay if I watch this? Is it okay if I look at this? Well, this stuff's already out there and, I don't care what you think about pornography, but pornography is, in my opinion, the most damaging, the most damning thing in the church that nobody is talking about. It's so prevalent that the pornography industry, and you can look this up yourself, brings in more income than the fast food industry. So if that doesn't rattle your cage, it should. And Jesus is really, really clear concerning sexual immorality. He talks about adultery, and he says, you've read that it's unlawful for a man to commit adultery. But I'm going to take it a step further, that if anybody even looks on another person's wife or looks upon somebody that's not their spouse with lust, they have committed infidelity. So that's God's standard when it comes to sexual immorality. That begs the question, how do I stop? Where do I go? Where do I draw the line? This is what the question you should be asking yourself about things with regards to sexual immorality should land. Here it is. Don't ask yourself, how far can I go? How much I can consume. Don't ask yourself, how close can I get with my significant other that I'm not married to before it's a sin? When do I cross the sin line? What the question you should be asking is, how can I stay as far away from that line before it becomes a temptation? That's the real question. The question shouldn't be, how close can I get? The question should be, what can I do to keep myself even from that line? What do I have to do? And some of you, I'll be honest, you have to take really, really strict measures with regard to sexual purity because you have been struggling with pornography, because you have been dealing with a sexual relationship that is not good. So what do? You have to set up accountability. You have to ask someone, you have to call and reach out to someone and say, hey, I need your help with this. You have to reach out to a Christian Bible study group. Maybe put Covenant Eyes on your computer. Maybe instead of having a smartphone that you get a flip phone. That sounds horrible. You're like, oh my goodness, my freedoms, my rights. If your rights are causing you to stumble in your relationship to Jesus, they are no longer rights and privileges. They are shackles that are keeping you in bondage. So, if you want to know the will of God, one of the things that we have to get under control and submit to Him in is with regard to the area of sexual immorality.